Hey everybody, this is Andre here with the Kevin Breeze channel, and this is pros and cons for the Samsung Galaxy A32 4G. Today, I'm going to be going over some of the best and worst things about this phone. Let's get started. So my first pro for this phone is the display. This phone has a 6.4-inch 90Hz Super AMOLED display with a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 411, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and a screen-to-body ratio of 84.6%. Overall, the design looks really sleek and modern, the bezels are super thin, and the 90Hz display is really what tops it all off for me. Not only does it have a Super AMOLED where the colors are a lot brighter and more powerful than something like an LCD or the TFT display that the 5G version of this phone has, but it also has that 90Hz, and what a 90Hz does that's better than a 60Hz display is it makes the movements on the screen a lot smoother. So if you're doing content consumption, if you're playing a game, even if you're scrolling through something, this scrolling is so much smoother than a 60Hz display, and it really does make a difference, especially for content consumption. If you're streaming videos or playing video games or something like that, it's going to be looking real nice. Now, my first con for this phone is the quality of the camera. Now, this phone does have some great features on its camera, which I will get to a little later. But as far as the quality goes, compared to its 5G counterpart and even its predecessor, the Samsung Galaxy A31, the quality is a little bit underwhelming as far as the photos that it can take. This is a picture taken with the regular rear camera of the phone, and if you can see, there's a little bit of a haze, and the image is really not that sharp, and the colors are pretty boring and dead looking too. I think the pictures taken by both the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G and the Samsung Galaxy A31 are both better than the pictures taken by this, and this phone has so many other advantages, like the display, for example, and this phone is the newer version of the A31, so I don't quite know how they got to this level from where it was before. But on the other hand, the related pro that I have for this is the camera features. Even though the quality of the images themselves are really not what I felt they should be, this phone not only has a 20 megapixel front-facing camera, but also on the back, we got a 64 megapixel rear camera, an 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera, a 5 megapixel depth sensing camera, and a 5 megapixel macro camera. So really, any feature you could ask for on a smartphone, this phone has. The only feature this phone doesn't have on the camera is a telephoto lens, and I've only ever seen those on flagships anyway. So if you really wanted to have good quality pictures from this phone, all you'd really need is a halfway decent editing software and maybe another camera app like Open Camera, and you'd be pretty much good to go for the most part. So even though the quality of the photos is a little bit underwhelming in and of itself, the features of the camera really do make up for this, and I think that that's an actually nice aspect of it, because even if you're really into photography and you want good pictures, all you really need to do is just put in a little bit more effort of getting a photo editing app and fixing the disappointing parts about the photos from this phone. Now, my next con for this phone is the few quirks that it has in the fingerprint scanner. So this fingerprint scanner is really nice looking and it works really well. It's on the screen, looks really nice and modern, but you have to actually apply some pressure to get it to open right. So if I go like this, it's going to say it doesn't match. So I actually have to push down a little bit to get it to work. Now, this isn't really that big a deal, but for a phone with such nice features, I would expect it to be a little bit better. This is one of the first times I've had this situation where I actually have to apply pressure to the fingerprint scanner to get it to actually unlock. Most of the other ones are really effortless and really fast. And even though this one's decent, it still could be improved a lot. And I've seen much cheaper phones with faster fingerprint scanners. So I am taking that into account as well. My next pro for the phone is the storage. This storage is absolutely amazing. With 128 gigabytes of internal storage with microSD card expansion, you're not going to be running out of space anytime soon. You can have a bunch of apps on there, a bunch of music and that sort of thing, and still have room for a ton of photos and videos. Even if you run out of space, you can get a microSD card and expand it even more. So overall, it's really impressive, especially for a mid-level phone. Typically, phones around this price range are going to get 64 gigabytes of internal storage, which isn't really bad. In this day and age, with files getting larger and larger, as well as apps and even the system itself, it's important to have as much storage as you can get, and this phone really satisfies that requirement. Another con I have for this phone is that there's no wireless charging. I think it's pretty disappointing that more mid-level phones don't have wireless charging, because I think that they could even use wireless charging better than a flagship phone, because at this point, if something happens to your charging port, the phone's basically useless because it can't charge. But if your charging port gets clogged or broken or whatever, and you still want to use the phone until it's completely unusable, then you could if the phone had wireless charging, because then you could just buy a wireless charger and charge it up without actually having to plug it in and have it last a little bit longer. With a flagship phone, you're more unlikely to just let it go. But with these phones, it would be nice if there was some sort of recourse for if something happened to your charging port. That, and it's just a nice feature that I think more phones besides flagship phones should have. My next pro for this phone is that it has NFC. NFC is such a cool technology that allows you to use Google Pay or Samsung Pay. And since it's becoming more and more widely accepted in so many different places, it's good that more mid-level phones are getting it. It used to be more of a flagship feature, but now with this phone, you can finally use NFC on a phone that's not super high-end. My next con for this phone, now this is a real nitpicky thing, but this phone has a water drop notch for the front-facing camera. I don't like this look at all. I think the hole punch front-facing cameras look so much better, and I'm not sure why this phone has a water drop notch, because phones like the Samsung Galaxy A51, for example, do have the hole punch design for the front-facing camera, so I don't know why they couldn't just keep that consistent with the entire A series. Now, it's not really that big a deal. It, of course, doesn't affect functionality, but I do think it looks kind of silly having this little thing extending from the bezel instead of just a hole punch where the front-facing camera should be. The iPhones have that giant notch in the middle of where the status bar should be, and this is almost as bad. I just don't get why they do this. So hopefully in future designs, they will change it. My last pro for this phone is the battery. This phone's battery is absolutely great. With a 5,000 milliamp hour battery that supports 15 watt charging, there's really nothing above it. You're getting the biggest battery in the industry, plus being able to support fast charging. So that's definitely a win here. Not only are you going to get more life per charge than a phone with a smaller battery, but it's also going to have that longevity down the road. Once the phone starts getting old and the battery starts degrading, you're not going to notice it as much because the battery is such a good size. Now, my last con for this phone is the processor. I think this processor is a little bit disappointing. It's not bad. The phone's getting 4 gigabytes of RAM with the MediaTek Helio G80 processor. We ran a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on the phone. It came back with a single core score of 347 and a multi-core score of 1308. So the numbers aren't really that bad, but at the same time, just given the great display this phone has and the other nice features, even the material and feel of this phone suggests that it's higher end than it actually is. So I would think that they would at least give this phone a little bit stronger of a processor. Now, if you are looking for a phone with a little bit more power, the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G does have a little bit more power, but still, I would expect it to be more in the 1800 range, just given how nice they made this phone out to be. But this is pros and cons for the Samsung Galaxy A32 4G. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and hopefully it helped you in your decision-making process as well. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe. And also, if you want more information on pricing and availability, be sure to check the link in the description and watch the full review of the phone on the channel for more info about the device itself. But that's it for this video, guys. I will see you in the next one.